What's good, y'all? It's the Demouchets REACT, and we're back with another video. Who we got today, C?
Today we're back with another American reaction. Super excited about this video. If you're new to us
and we're new to you,
make sure you scroll down,
hit that subscribe button,
and turn on the post notification bell
because we're on the road to 200K.
And we cannot get there without you guys, alright? Join the family. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
If you think of Germany, especially in a historical context, what comes to your mind? I bet at least 99% of you are thinking of Nazis, World War II, the Third Reich, Hitler, and the Holocaust. And rightly so. It's one of the darkest chapters in history. I know that, you know that, yet a lot of people are unsure if this is something they can bring up around me and other Germans. Some people assume that it's a total taboo topic in Germany, something that isn't really discussed in society. But how much of that is actually true? How does Germany deal with its dark past? What is taught about it in school? And is it okay to bring the topic up around Germans? Now, I have answered this question in different contexts before, like in this Q&A video, for example, where I gave a quick 2-minute summary, but today I would like to dive a little deeper. I'd like to talk about how this topic has been dealt with publicly in Germany over the last 78 years since the end of World War II. I'd like to share my personal experience of how it was approached in my school and my personal environment, and I'd also like to share how other Germans from different regions and of different generations have experienced this. To do so, I asked my German viewers to fill out a survey about the topic, and I received over 230 responses that will give you guys and myself a pretty good idea of how Germans in general think about the curriculums and the overall approach of how we deal with our country's dark past. After the end of the war in Germany in May of 1945, the Allied powers, France, UK, USA, and the Soviet Union, divided Germany into 4 occupation zones and started the process of denazification, demilitarization, decentralization, and democratization, also referred to as the 4 Ds. To denazify the country, the NSDAP, so the Nazi Party, and all sub-organizations were banned, and its laws were abolished, and all signs of the Third Reich were erased from everyday life, including books, uniforms, medals, and street names. Germany also had to make reparation payments to the victorious powers and other affected countries that were mainly paid in machinery, manufacturing plants, and forced labor. Most Germans were also subject to investigations by the International Military Tribunal that was looking to identify the different roles people played in the Holocaust and in committing war crimes. Germans were divided into 5 categories, from major offender to exonerated individuals. Major offenders were tried in the first Nuremberg trial from November 1945 to October 1946, and in 12 subsequent Nuremberg trials that were solely held by the US. All in all, 36 defendants were sentenced to death, 125 received prison sentences, 23 of them for life. Not all of these verdicts...
So you telling me they went back and found the people, the perpetrators, the ones who was causing all chaos, and put these people on the hot seat?
Yeah, the ones who was involved.
And sentenced them on top of reparation? Y'all didn't come to play.
Yeah, they really took care.
Y'all didn't come to play.
Ends, the victims and the people, you know.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Hold up, it's.
Okay. That's what they did. They did that.
I want this video to be solely about Germany.
Yeah.
I'm a pray that I could do that. Because I just wish the same things was applied here.
Okay. I feel you. I feel you. And I think everybody's thinking that. We all have a history. You know what I'm saying?
But, you know, this topic was something that we spent weeks on in school. Weeks. So I think I want to say every American, but again, I got to keep reiterating this. 50 states, 50 different curriculums. But I think I'm going to be bold and say that everybody spent weeks, maybe even more than a month.
Yeah, we learned
about the Holocaust.
Definitely learned about the Holocaust. Definitely had to watch film about it. Yeah, we did a lot.
Not just one time, like throughout our grade years.
We actually dove into it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, let's do this. Let's Focus.
We're gonna focus because y'all know we always talk about our experiences and different things, but I feel like we have to give Germany that respect. This
Facts.
video
Yeah,
is
I
about
feel that. Yeah, we do a lot of comparisons just
But-
so you guys can see where we be coming from when we say what we say, because we can't just be saying stuff
Right.
and then y'all understand without you guys actually understanding why we said it.
right.
Some people just, how you say that? Some people just not mature.
Yeah, some people are not mature.
People just not mature enough.
It's the fact that the U.S. held majority of the trials is why I said what I said. But continue.
Let's get it.
Were actually executed, though. A lot of the convicts ended up being released after just a few years and pardoned from the death penalty as the denazification process became more and more lenient in the Western zones. Due to the extremely high number of cases, less severe offenders were soon handed over to civilian tribunals under German administration, and it became increasingly difficult to find a balance between punishment and rebuilding the country, for which the occupying powers needed to fill a lot of important positions. And having hundreds of thousands of Germans in internment camps didn't exactly make that easy. Now, together with the development of the Cold War, during which West Germany was considered an important ally, the focus quickly started shifting away from strict denazification and more towards rehabilitation. By 1948, countless trials were ceased or never started, and as I said, lots of people were pardoned, which to this day is heavily criticized, as it meant that people that used to be active members of the Nazi Party ended up keeping their high-ranking jobs and remained in positions of power in the newly founded West German Republic. In the Soviet occupation zone, denazification was followed through a lot more strictly and quickly. By spring of 1948, they had fired and replaced over 500,000 people. But how did the Germans themselves deal with the war and this dark chapter moving forward? Well, for the first 2 decades after the war, it pretty much just wasn't talked about at all. The country was full of people who were actively involved in the crimes of the Third Reich, and most common way of dealing with it was silence. Most of them weren't willing to face their own guilt, let alone take responsibility for their actions, and their families often preferred staying in the dark about how badly their own spouses, parents, and grandparents were really involved in it all. Same thing applied to schools. Many of the teachers were formally involved with the Nazis, and the details of the Third Reich were barely part of the curriculum. It wasn't really until the 1960s that young adults in Germany started demanding from their elders to take responsibility for their past and to start an open it's dialogue. So
It's
There's always a generation. It's the babies that always want to start talking and doing what you gotta do. I see what y'all did though. Yeah. So you mean to tell me the only way they had to understand their history was that though they couldn't talk about it publicly, you could tell they're still speaking about it within their homes. Because them babies didn't just come up and not, you know what I'm saying? Because the silence, like if they strictly would have been silent, the babies wouldn't have been aware. 100%. They wouldn't have. They would have been like 20% on game, 5%, 10%. But the 100% made a big change.
Right. And possibly, maybe, I'm thinking the ages. She said the 60s. Okay. Maybe they heard whispers.
100%.
Maybe they saw things.
They talk.
Yeah.
They talk. You can't erase history. I mean, I don't care if you put a lid on it. I don't care if you put a board in front of it. You can't take that away from life that happened.
That's why things need to be talked about.
Yes, 100%.
Regardless of how people feel about it, regardless of it's going to make one group look bad. If one group look bad, they need to look bad because of what happened. You can't learn from the past if you don't discuss the past.
And take accountability.
Take accountability.
Yeah, 100%.
All of this was part of the 1968 student movements in West Germany that arose parallel to protests all over the world at the time. The outrage was partly triggered by different events that had taken place throughout the 60s, including the so-called swastika epidemic, the Eichmann trial, the Frankfurt Auschwitz trial, the debate about the imminent statute of limitations of NS crimes, and the election of a former Nazi Party member, Kurt Georg Kiesinger, as Chancellor. As a result, West Germans finally started owning up to their country's past more intensely in the 70s and 80s. Nazi Germany and the Holocaust became a mandatory part of school curriculums, and TV shows like the American miniseries Holocaust, that about a third of the population watched on German TV, prompted people to reflect on the brutality of the genocide of 6 million European Jews and the emotional stories of the victims. Other notable productions of the time are the German war film Das Boot, as well as the French documentary Shoah, among others. Today, Germany practices a very active culture of remembrance. It's all about taking responsibility for our country's devastating actions of the past and making sure that something like that can and will never happen again. This includes that it's actually illegal in Germany to deny or downplay the Holocaust. 17 other European countries have similar laws, by the way. It's also illegal to do the
world spread.
I said I wasn't gonna say that. I lied. We need something like that here.
We do, but I think everybody could see that. Like, come on.
They still say, "Oh, it wasn't that bad."
They don't take accountability.
It was long ago.
Oh, it's too long ago.
That long ago.
We're going, and they still trying to like take it out to schools and stuff. We don't even get it in schools. We can't even really talk about it without someone thinking that we plan on having a victim mindset. We can't even bring it. Like, even with the system, you guys, certain things get flagged because of the conversation, and I'd be like, how in the world? Like, it just don't make sense. So I kind of seen that coming.
I mean, if they took away all the things there, I'm keeping it to Germany. But I had to say that. I
had a lot of points I had to say too. So now I
Yep, you with me too.
Hitler salute or use Nazi insignia, unless it's part of art, science, research, or teaching, and the topic is a visible part of public life. Many former concentration camps have been turned into memorial sites that can be visited today to learn from the past and understand the scale of the Nazis' crimes. In addition to that, street names, memorials, museums, and stumbling stones commemorate the victims of the Nazi regime all over Germany. The Stumbling Stone, or Stolperstein project, was started in the 90s by German artist Gunter Demnig and entails brass plates inscribed with the names and life dates of victims that are set into the pavement outside of their last known address or workplace. You'll never know when and where you'll quite literally stumble over one, which shows that deportation took place anywhere and everywhere. Yeah. And by bending down to read the victims' names, you're pretty much bowing down to them to pay them respect. To this day, over 75...
I was going to pause it.
That's beautiful.
That is, ours is trees. You can look at the tree. Yeah. Our tree look like it's still crying.
You can still see like some things of the lynchings on the trees.
Our trees are literally like, that's why in Louisiana our trees are so uniquely made, bro. Like when you look at how it hovers over and then it sways downward and then it creates a path because of how the leaves fall. You know what I'm saying? Like you can
growing.
You can see that. You can see that in the homes still that they have that has been built for years. Like you can still see it. You know what I'm saying? I mean that's nice though.
Yeah, that takes a lot of research. Well, maybe not. Maybe they kept records of things.
I mean, but it's still research, bro. Yeah. Like you got to figure out who lived where, and like that's family trees you're going through for people. Right. You know what I'm saying? You're basically going through their whole family tree to figure out if they have a relative that was part of this.
Who got deported right in the street, like the construction to put that down.
Man, I love it.
A lot.
You can put that anywhere pertaining to how things was happening around that time, and then you can stumble. It's a stumbling block, and you see you can't miss it. It's like, yo, I'm way over here, and you mean to tell me that this was a
Yeah, that is good to know for our Germany trip.
Wow.
Just seeing it, because if we wouldn't have watched this video, we probably wouldn't have knew about it until we got there. But on our trip and when we're walking and we see something like that, I would be the person to be like, hold on, babe. Now let's do this one. Now let's do this one.
For real. Literally,
all over,
each one. But let me go get me something to eat real quick. And she was celebrating our real talk, but I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's such a big sign of representation. It's a big stamp in history for you guys. It's memorial. Like it's there. It's not going nowhere.
Yeah, I can't say that we don't have something like that, because on the plantations and some of the museums, there's the names of the people. who were enslaved on the plantations, and there are names of people who were lynched. So we do have something like that. I gotta give us that.
Yeah, they have showed respect. You know what I'm saying? Museums and whatnot. They've showed respect, bro. But that's why I mentioned, like, if you just want to see a plain sight, we could explain to you, like, the structure of how a tree is. Because, the tree. The way the trees has been.
Yeah, because y'all may be like, a tree. How you gonna structure a tree? But no, he's serious. Like, what do you call it? Moss trees?
Oak trees?
Oak trees and moss trees, that's where they were lynched from. And
swing, yep.
Yeah.
Thousands of those stumbling stones have been laid all over Europe, making it the world's largest decentralized memorial. And of course, there are countless movies, documentaries, and books that critically deal with the Third Reich and the post-war era, and that ensure that the victims of the NS regime aren't forgotten. To this day, the historical responsibilities that Germany carries are deeply ingrained in German culture and politics. Germany has a very unique relationship to Israel, for example, and in the late 50s and early 60s, they signed contracts with Israel, with the Jewish Claims Conference, and 12 European countries regarding compensation to victims of the NS regime, some of which are being paid up to today. You'll also notice that most Germans don't really have a very pronounced sense of patriotism. With the exception of sporting events, like the Soccer World Cup, you won't see a lot of German flags, for example, not even in schools and other public buildings, unless they're government institutions. There's no such thing as the American Pledge of Allegiance, and the German national anthem is only sung on a small number of occasions. Whether that goes back to an ongoing feeling of guilt and shame, and whether or not that's still called for, is actually a much discussed question among Germans. By the way, you won't find any Nazi statues in Germany. Hitler himself actually banned any kind of memorials of him from the beginning, and other statues were either taken down by the Nazis themselves to repurpose their metal for the war effort, they were destroyed by bombings, or, at the latest, taken down by the Allied powers after the war. Now, what do German students learn about World War II and the Holocaust in school? Let me start by sharing my own experience. As you guys know, I'm from Munich, which is in the state of Bavaria, and I went to elementary school and then to a gymnasium there. That's important to note because the school system and the curriculums in Germany actually differ from state to state. Now, I'm 29 years old, so it's been a while, and I don't remember every single detail, but I do know that we started talking about the topic relatively early. I think in 5th or 6th grade, and then we pretty much talked about it all the way until graduation. And it wasn't just in history class, but in a lot of different subjects. It was a very present topic in German class, for example. In 6th grade, we read a book called Damals war es Friedrich, which is about the friendship between a non-Jewish boy and his Jewish neighbor throughout the Third Reich. Then later on, we read books like Die Welle, originally The Wave, which is about a school experiment about the Third Reich. And then we also read Die Schachnovelle by Stefan Zweig, as well as Andorra and Homo Faber by the Swiss author Max Frisch. We also talked about it in religion/ethics class a lot, because yes, that's a mandatory subject in Bavarian schools. In arts class, we learned about what the Nazis classified as degenerate art and Art de Kunst, and the topic also came up in the context of arts interpretations. And even in music class, we analyzed the musical and lyrical features of Nazi propaganda songs. Wow. And from what I remember, the topic was also touched upon here and there in classes like English, sociology, and geology. In history class, the main focus on the topic was in 9th grade. I think we spent pretty much the whole year learning about the Weimar Republic, World War II, and post-war Germany. And that's also the year where we went to the concentration camp Dachau, which is right outside of Munich. That's something that was mandatory at my school, and I think the same goes for most schools in the area. And then the topic was one of the main focuses again in history class in 11th and 12th grade. Since I grew up in Munich, we also learned a lot about the resistance group of the White Rose, Weiße Rose, since they were located in Munich. I know that Germans in other regions don't learn about them as much, but they were all students at the University of Munich, same university I went to, and they were arrested and killed in their early 20s by the Nazis for distributing leaflets criticizing the Nazi regime. And their names are very present in Munich to this day, especially the siblings Hans and Sophie Scholl, but also Willy Graf, Christoph Probst, Kurt Huber, and Alexander Schmorell. Overall, I feel like there was a lot of focus on the suffering of the Jews and how cruel and inhumane things were, We also learned a lot about Nazi propaganda and about the political, economic, and cultural factors that made World War II and the Holocaust even possible and that led people to believe in such an awful ideology. I don't really remember learning a lot about who Hitler was as a person, and I don't remember talking a lot about the details of the war and warfare. We definitely covered the timeline of the important events of the war, but I don't remember talking about single battles or which weapons and strategies were used, etc. And I'm mentioning this because a lot of Americans here actually know way more about all of that than I do, and I think warfare in general is just a more popular topic in the US. Now, there's probably a lot from my school days that I forgot to mention, but I do remember that by like 8th or 9th grade, a lot of us were honestly getting a little tired of the topic.
Well, here like we said earlier, we did learn a lot about the Holocaust. And yeah, it was, you know, the emotional parts of it, we were able to sympathize with it more. And I remember at my school, it was one of my elementary schools, so this was a long time ago. We actually had a survivor come to the school and spoke to the entire school. So, like, it was that deep for us.
It's good stuff.
But yeah, I'm gonna keep it on y'all. I'm gonna keep it on y'all.
See, class was just so long that when we finally had a chance to listen to a listener come to our schools, it's like we thought we had a break. We're like, oh, cool, we finally get to
Kids.
Oh, we're getting out the desk today, you know what I'm saying?
The nerd.
We get to go to the library and just stand around or go to the gym and stand around and listen to someone talk about something. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it was ever something like you have mentioned. But then again, it's so long ago. I definitely remember the movie. I remember the topic. I just remember how much of a topic it was. And Frank, especially. And Frank. We had to write essays on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of stuff like that.
Writing letters. I don't want to say writing letters, but I do remember writing letters. I don't remember the purpose of the letter, but, like, I remember a lot. Like, Anne Frank came about around 5th grade. I'll say about 5th grade.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. There was a lot of learning about the Holocaust and the war.
And we were sometimes just like, ugh, not again. But of course, looking back, it's definitely better to talk about it too much than not talking about it enough. And I definitely say that by the time we graduated, we walked out of there with a strong awareness for racism, discrimination, and identifying populist and nationalistic tendencies and propaganda. Now, of course, World War II is something that you'll also be confronted with in real life outside of school. And that can be a very individual experience because depending on your family environment, your friends, the field you work in, you'll be exposed to it in very different ways. In my case, I definitely always felt relatively close to the topic because unlike most other people my age, it's not my great-grandparents that lived through the war, but my grandparents. Everyone just had children very late in my family, so all 4 of my grandparents lived through the war as teenagers and adults, and therefore were affected or even involved in it in different ways. One side of my family is from Upper Silesia, for example, which was German territory at the time, but now belongs to Poland. So when the Eastern Front got there, they lost their home and became refugees. They were actually part of the winter treks of January of 1945, which was historically cold, and they fled partly by foot and then started from zero after the war, like so many people in Germany. One of my grandfathers was also imprisoned in the GDR for a few years. Now, only one of my grandparents was still alive when I was born, my grandma, but I did hear a lot of first-hand stories from her, and of course I heard a lot of stories about my other grandparents from relatives, and I read about it in their memoirs. So that's my personal connection to the topic, and maybe that's also the reason why I feel extra passionate about fighting discrimination of minorities, and why I believe that war is the worst thing humans have ever invented. Now, since I'm not the only one of 84 million people in Germany, and as I said earlier, curriculums vary a lot throughout the country, I wanted to make sure that the experiences and opinions of other Germans are included in this video as well. It actually received over 230 submissions to my survey that I sent out, so thank you guys so much to everyone who took the time to fill that out. I will say it was a lot of work to go through it all, and I won't be able to mention every single answer here, but it was fascinating to read, and I'm going to summarize it as best as I can. And I'll also be sharing quotes from the survey with you guys in German because I wanted wanted people to be able to answer this in their native language, but I'll add English subtitles. To give you guys a general overview at first, I did get answers from people of all ages, from 13 to 65, and from all over Germany, and even a couple responses from Austria. And to my question, how well would you say school educated you about World War II, the Holocaust, and the Third Reich? Nobody selected not at all. About 2% said insufficiently, 14% said basics were covered, but it could have been more, 47% said very well, and about 38% even selected almost too well. The topic was hashed and rehashed over and over again. So I think that shows that most people definitely felt like the topic was taught about very intensely. All other questions were open-ended questions, by the way, so I can't tell you the exact percentages, but I'd say the overall consensus was that the topic was taught in a rather objective, but also serious and very respectful way, while being brutally honest, and most people said that it was always age-appropriate still, and was slowly building up throughout the grades. Carina from Dortmund wrote, for example, in der 8. Klasse haben wir erst gelernt, was das Dritte Reich war, wer Hitler war, die NSDAP und so weiter. In der 9. dann großer Fokus auf die Judenverfolgung. In der 10. Klasse dann den Krieg im Detail besprochen, Filme und Dokumentationen geschaut, die teilweise sehr brutal waren, aber einfach nur die Realität abgebildet haben. Schuld wurde uns nie eingeredet. Immer nur Verantwortung und das Bewusstsein, dass Faschismus keine Meinung ist, sondern ein Verbrechen. Corbinian from Hessen. Meiner Meinung nach wurde das Thema zwar häufig relativ brutal durch Bilder, Videos, Filmaufnahmen etc., aber dennoch altersgerecht behandelt. Häufig wurde bei Opferzahlen und Holocaustmorden tief ins Detail eingegangen. Dennoch war die Behandlung des Themas meiner Meinung nach genauso angebracht, weil man dadurch überhaupt erst den schieren Schrecken und die unfassbare Unmenschlichkeit begreifen konnte. Es war häufig nicht schön anzusehen, doch genau so haben wir gelernt, was dieser Abschnitt der deutschen Geschichte überhaupt bedeutet. And Alex from Cal.
Okay, hold on before we continue, because it's getting a little bit too emotional. Okay, so let me tell y'all how big of a deal it was for my school when we learned about the Holocaust in high school. Our junior year, end of school year trip was to Germany. Granted, I didn't go, but that's how much.
That's how important it was.
Yeah, and important it was. And we didn't even take trips to plantations in high school. The only trips I took to plantations with school involved was elementary. That's the only time I ever went.
Yeah.
And granted, that could be because I lived in New Orleans during that time, but we did have a small plantation in the town that I graduated in, and it just never really came up.
Sad.
Slavery did not come up in high school.
And again, me, I'm not a brain of an elephant here, but when it comes to thinking about it, it's literally like maybe a 1%, 2% where I can remember at all, if anything, of a topic, but it's literally none, to be honest with you.
Really? Like, I remember, you talking about slavery or the...
Slavery. Okay. Slavery. I remember the Holocaust, Anna Frank, movies,
every year.
Watching it, the black and white screens. I remember that. Watching it on the, whatever they had up around that time. But, man, I remember all that. Yeah, no.
The plays. We had plays, too.
The projector. Like, they would have the projector, and it's like, we're going to watch a movie today. It's like, first we'd be like, hoes, and then we'd be like, okay, boom. Catch something a little more intense. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, the boxcars, like, yeah. So that's our education on it.
Yeah.
Ruhe said, es war angemessen, respektvoll den Opfern gegenüber und informativ. In Geschichte haben wir uns kritisch damit auseinandergesetzt und haben uns Fragen gestellt wie, was war die Ideologie der Nazis? Was waren ihre Ziele? Wie konnte es dazu kommen? Es gab auch einen Vortrag von Salih Perel, einem Überlebenden des Holocausts bei uns an der Schule, der für alle ab der 8. Klasse verpflichtend war. Eltern durften auch kommen, wenn sie wollten. Er hat uns davon erzählt, was ihm passiert ist und wie es ihm damit ging. Am Ende durften wir auch Fragen stellen. Zum Thema Schuldgefühle hat er etwas gesagt, das mir viel geholfen hat. Ihm ist bei seinen Vorträgen aufgefallen, dass junge Menschen oft Schuldgefühle haben, obwohl sie nichts damit zu tun hatten. Das ändert aber nichts. Stattdessen ist es unsere Aufgabe, sicherzustellen, dass es sich nicht wiederholen kann. Es gab später auch noch einen Vortrag von einem Ex-Neonazi bei uns an der Schule. In der 11. haben 2 Geschichtskurse, meine eingeschlossen, eine Exkursion zu einem Konzentrationslager in Frankreich gemacht. In deutschen Religion haben wir uns mehr mit der Perspektive der Verfolgten auseinandergesetzt.
Oh, she got more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Und welche Rolle die Kirche zu der Zeit gespielt hat. Unter anderem durch das Tagebuch der Anne Frank. By the way, most people mentioned that they started talking about the topic sometime between 5th and 9th grade, but a few even said it was brought up as early as 3rd grade, and lining up with my own experience throughout all kinds of subjects. Annie from Northern was...
You know, I mean, when I think about it, it's like, had it been a real subject like it was for you guys, it was overly taught, which is a good thing. Like she mentioned, it's better to talk about it and not say anything at all. I don't remember those conversations, whether it's between friendship, school, with the teachers, or any of that such coming up, like from a young age all the way up. Like, I don't remember that being I just don't remember having a beat, you know what I'm saying?
No,
it wasn't a conversation.
No, but it was when it came to the Holocaust, though.
Yeah. Okay.
I was going to say, okay, so she said that they even had a ex-neo-Nazi person come to their school to talk to them about it.
Okay.
And they were taught not to feel guilty about it, but to just learn from it so that it never happens again.
Yeah.
And so, y'all, I'm sorry. It's going to be hard for us not to bring it back to our experiences here. The fact that they're trying to take out learning about historical things that happen in this country, in the schools, they're not understanding that these things can
present itself. It could definitely, history can definitely represent itself again.
If we don't teach our young people about it so that they can learn from it and teach it brutally honest.
Yeah, 100%.
Instead of trying to sugarcoat it, we don't want children to
make
the other children feel bad. How we're making y'all feel bad if we're learning the same things?
I mean,
I remember being told, I'm sorry, y'all know I'm passionate about this. I remember being told by a peer that, if you were, and remember, I was darker when I was a child. If this was during the times of slavery, you would have been out in the cotton field.
Oh, that was our conversations.
Yeah, that was our conversations.
You'd been in the house, or you'd have been in the field.
Right. So, like, when politicians bring up that they want to take it out of the schools because it makes the other groups feel bad, what about the ones who was picked on because we were talking about that?
I think that's a conversation that I don't want to necessarily dive into, but I see exactly what that looks like. I know exactly what that looks like. I mean, you have, just like how it was here in Germany, the children woke up, they seen it, they heard it, they started to understand it, and they spoke. And we're living in a time where the generation is coming up and they're seeing it, they're understanding it, and they're not happy with what happened.
Right.
I mean, you're going to have children that's going to continue to come into this life, and they're going to look at history and who they are and where they come from. Everybody want to know that information. One person is going to feel some type of way. They're going to be upset.
Right.
They're not going to be happy with it. They're going to be like, why did this happen?
Right.
So it's just a question that just escalates and it just continues going on every time someone is brought into the world.
So it makes me feel like our schools didn't teach it as...
They try to hide
serious enough.
They try to hide
like they grazed over the subject.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't...
That's how I thought.
Yeah, it wasn't as... What are the words I'm trying to say?
Vigilant.
Yeah, but it wasn't as...
They put enough pressure on it.
We didn't learn about it enough. Like,
we didn't
build on it like we built on learning about the Holocaust and World War.
We had to create a relationship with, you know, the people that has put our people into slavery. We had to learn to love them without it necessarily being a conversation in the school systems where we can have a better understanding on sitting next to a person.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Saying that, damn, bro, like the relationship, we had to make it. We had to mend it. We had to forgive. We had to understand. But yet, the accountability is still absent. So it's like people are still coming in. They're not hearing about it in schools. Right. So it's like, yeah.
Right. I guess we build on it. It's like, you talk about slavery. Okay, that's done. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the achievement. And our history in this country is a history of good and bad. You know,
that rug is
bondage
big,
and liberty.
That rug is big.
We made a lot of achievements, so I'm not knocking teaching everything else, but you have a country who went through something in modern day history within the last 100 years. They couldn't sweep it under the rug. They didn't sweep it under the rug. The young people told them that we don't want y'all to keep putting this under the rug. Let us know exactly what happened.
Right, and then they do it. They gave it to them.
Right, and the fact about it, everything that happened, the U.S. had a play in building up their country again in a better way. So we need to take a page from the book that we instilled there and bring it back here. That's what I'm saying. You know, so it's good that they taught these things in school to the point that y'all was so sick of it. I wish the same was here.
Yeah.
You know, so look,
history can be very depressing, y'all.
It can be, though. But you have to learn from it.
Got to learn from it.
So that it never repeats.
Phalia even shared her experience in a video.
I think that we talked about in almost every subject. Let's see, history class, for sure. German class, where we would read important literature like Anne Frank. Religion, which is also part of the curriculum in most German schools, where we would not only learn about our religion, but also about others. And then English class, because we also learned about history. French, same thing. French history, where we talked about the Normandy and D-Day and you name it.
Silke from Oldenburg said about this: Im Geschichtsunterricht wurde recht ausführlich über das Wie konnte sowas nur passieren gesprochen. Der verlorene Krieg, Wirtschaftskrise, vorhandener latenter Antisemitismus. Im Kunstunterricht ging es um die Idealbilder, die sich in Bildern, Statuen und Architektur wiederfinden und um das, was entartete Kunst genannt wurde. In Deutsch und Englisch passende Lektüren. One person said that they watched The Boy in the Striped Pajamas in English class, for example, and in German class, people mentioned reading the books I mentioned earlier, but also books like The Diary of Anne Frank, Als Hitler das rosa Kaninchen stahl, or Die Blechtrommel, and movies such as Schindler's List. A few people also mentioned analyzing Hitler's rhetoric, as well as his speech and writing style, to better understand his propaganda techniques. Hitler's own book, Mein Kampf, however, was only mentioned by one person in the whole survey, which probably has to do with the fact that up until 2016, it wasn't actually allowed to be printed in Germany due to copyright issues. So if the book was discussed in school, it was usually just in the form of extracts. In addition to learning about personal destinies from books and movies, a lot of people also mentioned visiting concentration camps. I was actually a little surprised by how many people mentioned that, especially since not every school is close to a former concentration camp. So for many, this included an overnight trip. Some people even traveled to Poland to visit Auschwitz. Charlotte from Niedersachsen said, der Besuch des KZs in Bergen-Belsen ist bei uns Standard in der 9. oder 10. Klasse, was ich wichtig fand, weil man die Dimensionen viel stärker nachempfinden kann. Zusätzlich war ein Teil unserer Klasse in Krakau-Auschwitz, was ein bis heute einprägendes Ereignis war. Von dem Lager ist ja verhältnismäßig viel erhalten und die Bilder sind mir im Kopf geblieben. Danach wurde uns auch der Raum gegeben, über unsere Eindrücke zu reden, in einer Runde mit der mitreisenden Lehrkraft. Ich würde behaupten, dass jeder Deutsche einmal dort oder in einem vergleichbar gut erhaltenen KZ gewesen sein sollte. Carina wrote: Vor allem der Besuch mit Übernachtung im KZ Buchenwald war eine Erfahrung, die mir bis heute, 14 Jahre später, noch sehr stark im Gedächtnis geblieben ist. Was mir retrospektiv positiv in Erinnerung geblieben ist, dass nicht beschönigt wurde. Man hat uns immer die brutale Wahrheit darüber gesagt, was die Nazis den Menschen angetan haben. Egal wie grausam. In addition to that, a lot of people mentioned visiting museums, memorials, synagogues, Jewish cemeteries, and things like the Reichsparteitagsgelände in Nürnberg, or the home of Klaus von Stauffenberg even. A lot of schools also organized a trip to Berlin, which is actually something we did too in 10th grade, and that certainly included visiting the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe, among other things. And a lot of people also said that they had historical witnesses talk at their schools, like we heard in one of the quotes earlier, which I think is one of the most valuable experiences you could have, especially since today most of them aren't around anymore. One thing that I could definitely tell from the survey was how heavily people's experiences were dependent on the teachers they had. I think that's always the case in school, of course, but I think specifically with this topic, not everyone had a good experience.
Yes, it's very, very important. What I want to point out and commend the schools for, was it Germany that they didn't like? No, it was Sweden that they all felt like their schools need to be upgraded. But I want to commend the school system on bringing the children to the concentration camps, even if it's an overnight adventure. First of all, I don't see an overnight adventure happening in my home state.
No.
Nope, they ain't gonna let that fly.
No.
But the fact that a plantation camp in all of Louisiana, I would say We have a lot of plantation camps. I would say the nearest ones, depending on where in Louisiana we're talking about, is 2 hours away. Or maybe 4 hours away at most. You know, in the whole Louisiana. So, man, if only we could take a page from Germany's book. You know, we'll have more people who are enlightened and respect what happened and how far this country has come. You know, but I also want to make it clear that we are not complaining about learning about this at all.
Oh, yeah. I feel you on that.
At all here.
That is not... No.
Like, I think all of us, regardless of our own culture and backgrounds that we came from, had a respect for the Holocaust and what happened. So, yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
I feel like I had a comment, but it slipped me.
I'm sorry. I talked
No. No, you don't talk. You talk. Again, information is good. You can never receive over enough information. It's best to get it than not get it. So I feel whatever you're saying is 100% need to be said, and I feel like the people love it, they respect it. I love it and hella respect it.
Okay,
so
now don't be getting flirty on this video.
Flirty and serious.
Okay,
girl. Nah, but then so let me just say this then, since I got the floor to speak.
Okay, you always got the floor.
You know, it's just our norm to pick up the pieces and figure it out. That's just how we're wired. That's how our history kind of presented itself. That's how we kind of been. That's how we've been, you know, brought up, and that's how we've been operating for such a long period of time. So it's not that we're not. We know that we know our stuff. A lot of people know their stuff. We're not complaining, like you said. We're not complaining about not getting information. We got our stuff.
Right.
It's just us picking up the pieces and putting it together ourselves. That's how we get our stuff, though.
Yeah. So in other words, after we would go home from school, learning about the Holocaust and that happening, we wouldn't have to go pick up anything else to learn about it because we learned majority of it. But when it came to learning the history that happened in this country, we had to go look for the movies, we had to go look for books, we had to go look for the extra materials to educate ourselves. Yeah,
people to this day are still going to camps. Well, I guess plantations, you know what I'm saying? Just
as
to visit.
Adults.
As adults now, as adults to go visit. And I feel like if that was a call, like if somebody did a roll call on their page or whatnot and say, hey, we about to visit a plantation. We about to express and experience history for the first time for people who haven't never been there before. Like, I feel like a lot of people show up.
Right. I feel like, now this would be a costly trip, but let's say how I told y'all my junior year trip, my class trip was to Germany to go to the Holocaust. Why couldn't somebody propose, and again, I'm saying somebody, but I could have been the person, propose a trip to go to Canada to look at the remnants of the Underground Railroad. And of course, I know the Underground Railroad wasn't just one place. Because some of y'all be like, you don't know nothing about, baby, that's something we was taught at home before we even got to school. Right. But, you know, like Harriet Tubman, the church that she attended, like, you know, things like that. The Underground Railroad museums, like, we could have went there.
Yeah, but everybody's not mature enough for this conversation.
Yeah, okay. So
you know what I'm saying? Everybody, let me get it, bro. When I got it, I'm going to do it. It's like, nah. We're powerful in numbers, and we always have been. When one go, five should go. There's never one person who made it, and that's my conversation.
I'm taking some notes right now. I'm taking some notes, thinking of some strategies to do what they did. You know, the youth did in Germany, so that they can learn about it.
Yeah.
Sabine wrote, for example, meine Lehrer waren von der Nachkriegsgeneration, die das Schweigen gebrochen haben. Allerdings haben sie das Thema überkompensiert. Uns wurden sehr stark Schuldgefühle vermittelt. Ab der 3. Klasse haben wir Bücher über das Thema gelesen. Die waren natürlich noch nicht so brutal, aber später wurden wir nicht geschont. Wir haben grausamste Bilder ansehen müssen und waren auch in Auschwitz oder in Israel, wo wir unter anderem mit Opfern des Holocaust geredet haben. Insgesamt hat mich die Art und Weise, wie uns der Holocaust in der Schule beigebracht wurde, ziemlich traumatisiert. Ich bin später ins Ausland gegangen und habe dort erst nach Jahren ein relativ normales Verhältnis zu meiner Nationalität entwickeln können. Heute habe ich keine Schuldgefühle mehr. Allerdings tragen wir Deutsche eine Verantwortung, dass dieses Thema nicht vergessen wird. And a person from Mainz shared another pretty negative experience. Responding to the question in what manner it was taught, they said, sehr detailliert, fast schon schwärmerisch, für die Ausländer in der Klasse sehr beleidigend. Hatten eine ziemlich braune alte Dame als Lehrerin in Geschichte. Es wurde definitiv zu oft von den guten alten Zeiten gesprochen. Ich fand es schrecklich, dass sie eine Lehrkraft zugelassen haben, die schon fast verherrlichend über so ein schreckliches Thema gesprochen hat und einem jeden, der eine negative Einstellung dazu vertrat, eine schlechte Note reingedrückt hat.
Okay, so he had a teacher who
with a brown shirt, by the way. She had a brown shirt on.
May have brown shirt mean the N-word. Y'all N-word. No, N-word.
Oh, really? I thought he was just saying she had a brown shirt on.
No, their uniform. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh,
their
I thought
uniform,
he was
right?
describing her who, like, he didn't like her shirt.
No. She taught about it as that was the good old days.
Yeah, I heard that part.
And we have some people who feel like our history was the good old days too. So, and she taught
almost glorifying
she
it.
glorified it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good.
Trying to remember what I read.
That ain't that no more. We missed it.
But
we missed the
yeah,
part.
so-
Yeah, that ain't good at all. I don't feel play like sitting in class, listen to a teacher, an adult, talk to children about something and trying to make them feel like it was a good thing. Huh?
I mean, like I said,
What?
the history. You also got to think about the teachers. I like that person sent that in. You got to think about the teachers and their stance with it too, because maybe we were supposed to be taught more than what we were taught, but we were taught by the wrong people. But I'm glad that I did go to the schools that I went to in New Orleans, because they didn't play about it. They taught it just like it was done. That's how they taught it. But when I left those,
Dallas.
she is snoring.
Girl.
When I left that school district, that's when I felt like it started to get watered down.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel it.
I do want to say that this experience was definitely an exception, but I wanted to include it to show a few different aspects here. Other people were very lucky with their teachers though, like Lara from Duisburg. Ich fand, dass alle Lehrer es sehr gut angegangen haben, den richtigen Ton gewählt haben und uns auch bei schlimmen Bildern oder Videos vorgewarnt haben. Wer zwischendurch mal kurz raus wollte, durfte es auch. And there were also a few people that still experienced the time when the topic wasn't talked about a lot in school, like Katrin from North Rhine-Westphalia. In meinem Alter, zweite Generation nach dem Krieg, war es nicht sehr detailliert und wurde eher überflogen. Das eigentliche Wissen kam nicht aus der Schule, sondern mit dem Älterwerden aus Dokus. Bei uns als Schülern kam es so rüber wie, okay, wir können das Thema nicht aussparen, aber wir machen es so kurz und oberflächlich wie möglich. Ich glaube, erst jetzt, wo wesentlich mehr Zeit vergangen ist, traut man sich und ist nicht mehr ganz so beklemmt. One question that I personally found extremely interesting, and that might even be useful for any teachers out there, is which topics were covered repeatedly and which ones people felt like weren't covered enough. The vast majority of these over 230 people that answered the survey agreed that the main focus was clearly on the Holocaust, so the persecution of Jewish people, while the persecution of other minorities like Sinti and Romani, homosexuals, political opponents, people of color, and the euthanization of disabled people, etc., were barely covered. Other aspects that people said weren't covered enough included World War II outside of Germany, including the Pacific War, but even the actions of Germany's allies or the German invasion in Greece or Yugoslavia. Those are all things that I personally agree with too. I don't remember any of those things being part of the curriculum. And a lot of people also said they would have liked to learn more about post-war Germany and the denazification process, also about the history of anti-Semitism and that it wasn't something that the Nazis just came up with themselves, about German refugees. And I also saw quite a lot of people sharing my experience that they didn't learn a lot about the details of the war in terms of tactics, different battles, etc., and about Hitler as a person.
She was gonna say something else. Okay, so what did you learn?
The war.
You learned the war.
We learned the war. We learned the war. The
anytime
timeline of it. Yeah, the timeline.
Yeah, we learned everything.
Like the Tea Party, everything. They was talking about everything.
Yeah, we learned details about every war.
Yeah.
Every war. Yeah, so we learned about that. When it came to minorities, I remember my teacher, when we got to that subject, she just said anybody else. It would say other. So I didn't learn about the minorities like that.
Wow.
It would just say other. If you wasn't what they wanted, you, that's what we learned.
I think no one is born evil, and I cannot recall that we talked about what had happened to him, why he became that kind of person. So yeah, I think this would have been also important to understand.
One thing that was very interesting was that about half of the people said that they really focused on how the Nazis seized power and how the weaknesses of the Weimar Republic led to that, which is what I mentioned too, that was focused on a lot in my school. But then the other half listed this under things that weren't covered enough. And many also said it should have been talked about more how we can recognize warning signs and parallels of similar developments in society today. And last but not least, this was a common point of criticism as well. Ich bereue auch, dass ich so wenig über andere geschichtliche Themen gelernt habe. Der Holocaust und der Zweite Weltkrieg hat alles überschattet. Oh, wow. Which I would generally agree with. We really didn't get to cover a whole lot of other topics of recent history, but at the same time, I also think that it was important that we covered the topic so intensely, like Markus from Hildesheim says too. In der Schule hatte ich immer das Gefühl, dieses Thema wäre überrepräsentiert. Wenn ich jetzt mitbekomme, wie schlecht einige darüber informiert sind und wie diskriminierendes, rassistisches und rechtsradikales Gedankengut in und rund um Deutschland wieder aufkommt, wünsche ich mir, dass all diejenigen sich nochmal gründlich damit beschäftigen und damit dafür sorgen, nichts aus dieser furchtbaren Zeit auch nur ansatzweise zu wiederholen. Britta from Berlin says, bei mir kam die Message, dass das auf keinen Fall nochmal passieren darf und während den Anfängen definitiv rüber. Ich hatte auch noch viele 68er-Lehrer, deren Lebenswerk es quasi war, das Schweigen zu brechen. Ich hoffe, dass die jüngere Lehrergeneration das Erbe weiterführt. And even Laura, who became a history teacher, said this. Natürlich habe ich zwischendurch, wie wohl fast jeder deutsche Schülerin, das Gefühl gehabt, dass es zu viel thematisiert wird. Im Nachhinein finde ich es aber gut. Es hilft heute sehr dabei, rechte Parolen, wie Gaulands Aussage, der Nationalsozialismus sei Vogelschiss gewesen, einordnen zu können. In terms of how present the topic is outside of school in Germany today, people shared a lot of different opinions and experiences, and I won't be able to include all of them in this video, but many mentioned, for example, that some German TV channels pretty much show Nazi documentaries 24/7, which is definitely true, and I know that that can be pretty surprising for people visiting Germany. Some people said that the current political developments all around the world worry them and that they feel like German politicians should be more actively fighting that. Some mentioned how this whole topic of inherited guilt, Erbschuld, is still weighing on us as a country, but most people said that they think that Germany is doing a rather good job dealing with this topic, even though it's not perfect, and that it's important that the German government commemorates the victims of the NS regime on days like the International Holocaust Remembrance Day or on German Volkstrauertag and other memorial days. And some people also shared how difficult it can still be within their own families. I'm just going to read one quote from a young German that represents that pretty well. This is from Vivi, 18, from Lüneburg. In der Gesellschaft ist das ganz unterschiedlich. Es gibt halt so zwei Lager. Die einen finden es nicht genug, ich ebenfalls, und die anderen zu viel, darunter auch viele Jugendliche. Gut finde ich den Umgang in den öffentlich-rechtlichen Medien. Gerade zum Beispiel Kika hatte eine gute Kampagne, um es den Kindern näher zu bringen. Der Krieg und ich heißt das, glaube ich. In meiner Familie wurde viel totgeschwiegen. Gerade was die Leute so gemacht haben. Alle meine Urgroßväter waren im Krieg und teilweise Jahre danach in Gefangenschaft. Wer weiß, was für Gräueltaten sie damals begangen haben. Jedoch arbeiten meine Mutter und ich viel auf an Kriegstraumata und Fluchtgeschichte. Meine Großeltern kamen als Kinder aus Ostpreußen. Jedoch sind einige in der Familie immer noch der Meinung, dass darüber nicht gesprochen werden soll. Einige haben ihre Schuld und Geheimnisse bereits mit ins Grab genommen.
Okay.
Last but not least, is it okay to ask a German about World War II, the Holocaust, and Nazis, or is that offensive coming from a foreigner? Now, I didn't include this in my survey, but based on my experience, I can say yes, you can absolutely talk to us Germans about World War II. I even feel like a lot of Germans appreciate talking about it with outsiders from another country, especially when they find that they're educated on the topic. However, it's definitely important to us to stay respectful. I found that Germans can be a little more sensitive to jokes about the whole topic, for example, and not every German is going to be in the mood to talk about it, especially if people are still in school or just graduated and might be a little tired of the topic. But generally, this is something that we're very open about in Germany, and most of us will not feel personally offended just because you bring up our dark past. Let me know if you guys agree with me on that or not in the comments, but I recently came across this video by Radical Living.
Hey Hans, I was wondering, since you're German and all, do Germans still feel like guilty about World War II? How do you feel about it? Are you hungry? You look hungry. I'm gonna make us some sandwiches, okay? Be right back. I mean, your grandfather must have fought in the war, right? You ever talk to him about how it was, being on the evil side and everything? Oh God, I think I forgot the sausages in the car. I'm gonna go grab them, okay?
And then he just ends up making up more and more excuses.
Yeah, that's kind of like our reality half the time when we try to, you know, saying have that conversation, or just like people hear the conversation and they run away, they shy away from it. So that's kind of like what we express.
They'll say it's in the past.
Yeah.
But it's not really in the past if some of the laws are still stemming from that.
Oh.
And ends up driving away because he really wants to avoid talking about the topic. And even though I know it's satire, of course, and I'm not trying to deny that that's his reality, I just wholeheartedly disagree with the message of this. That's just never been my experience at all. By the way, just in general, it's a lot more common in Germany to talk about politics and difficult topics, even with strangers. And that's also why Germans often ask Americans very directly about controversial topics in the US and how they feel about them. Again, thank you to everyone.
Okay, so this was very enlightening. I just feel like we could take a couple pages from their books.
Yeah,
you know.
I agree with you on that.
But I feel like, in contrast to how we deal with what happened here in this country, we do not overteach at all, not one bit. But we do focus a lot of the attention on the Civil Rights Act, which I appreciate. You know, but I feel like the other thing needs to be discussed just as much too.
Agreed.
And the life, and so that we can appreciate how far we have come.
Yeah.
You know, like the Loving versus, is it Loving versus U.S.? The Supreme Court with the Lovings. That was something I didn't really learn about until after high school. I think I was in college when I learned that. So, you know, just things like that.
Yeah,
we need to
it's
do
just
better.
You see, my foot could be in one shoe where I could have woke up one morning and life could have been exactly perfect to where I didn't have to stop to think about trauma, problems, facing situations, you know what I'm saying? I would have had every A, B, and C, D in order, you know what I'm saying? I would never have to think about what happened yesterday.
Right,
Kind of wouldn't have been my first nature to want to know.
Right.
I would have been good with doing what I had to do. But then my foot's in the other shoe to where it's like, I'm in a position to where I see the brutality. I see the movies. I know the history. I know who I am. I know where I come from, and it makes you want to continue to research on it, and it makes you want to continue to enlighten people as well. So, you know, and that's just kind of the two fees that people walk in these days. And I just want to make awareness of everything that goes on in our history as much as possible, so people can know where they come from.
Right, and how it still affects us today.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah, I feel like this was good. Germany has done a good job with this subject. Yeah. This subject, you know, they have.
I don't know if you noticed, but every time I looked at the age, a lot of these people are very young.
Yeah, they had like some people that was like 45.
You seen one by 45?
I think the highest age was in the 60s.
I didn't see that. Because I was trying to get these reasons.
From her survey.
Yeah, from a survey. I know it's just a piece of it, but from what I see, it's a lot of young people.
Right. And we do know that we couldn't see some of the comments. So, as always, the link is going to be in the description box below for you to go and view the video on your own. Yeah. Okay. So, we hope you guys enjoyed this video with us. Like this video, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell. We have enabled our super thanks if you like to support the channel that way, as well as our reaction request form is in our description box below. We'll see you soon.
Peace.